Well, thank you for being here. And I want to start, I'm Jim Cates from Zephyr Press, and I want to thank Grolier for hosting these readings and for being our partner for all these years, both now and I hope in the future. We also need to thank for the books that are behind these readings. I'd like to express our thanks also to the Hong Kong Arts Development Council, the Massachusetts Cultural Council, and the National Endowment for the Arts, all of which contributed to the making of the books that the poets tonight are going to read. The poets tonight who are going to read represent what Zephyr's mission is to be a bridge between cultures. And these are two poets who straddle two cultures, who live in both cultures, both Chinese and American culture, and whose writings are deeply rooted in the Chinese, and whose face is to the United States. And we're very pleased to have them both read and read together, I think for the first time in a very long time. Zhang Er was born in Beijing and has written 7 collections of poetry in Chinese. Her most recent book in English translation, First Mountain, a collaborative work with the American poet Joseph Donahue, is ours from Zephyr Press, and we also published So Translating Rivers and Cities and Verses on Bird. She co-edited and participated in the translation of Another Kind of Nation, an anthology of contemporary Chinese poetry, and The Art of Women in Contemporary China, Both Sides Now. She also writes opera libretti in English for American composers. Her latest, Tacoma Method, with music by Gregory Yutz, is scheduled to premiere in 2023. Do you know where it's going to premiere? In Tacoma. In Tacoma with a, okay. Eleanor Goodman is the author of the poetry collection 9 Dragon Island and the translator of 4 award-winning books from Chinese, 3 of them, all in very different registers, published by Zephyr. Days When I Hide My Corpse in a Cardboard Box by Lok Fung, Something Crosses My Mind by Wang Xiaoni, and The Roots of Wisdom by Zhang. She is a research associate at the Harvard University Fairbank Center and a recipient of the National Endowment for the Arts Fellowship. Her translation of poems by the Chinese migrant worker poet Zheng Xiaoqiong will appear later this year. And I have not determined what order or how they're going to read together. They will bring that to you themselves. So please welcome Zhang Er and Eleanor Goodman.
Feel unmasked. I really want to thank both Zhang Er and Jim Cates and everybody at Zephyr Press for bringing me out here from the suburbs for the first time since the pandemic hit. It's very weird to be among people and also really wonderful. And hi to everybody online. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to read from 3 books, my Zang translation, my translation of Lok Fung, and then some poems from 9 Dragon Island, which is my own collection. So I'll start with Zang. Zang is a mainland poet. He writes in Mandarin Chinese. He's considered a highly intellectual poet. He's also a poet of nature and highly philosophical, very erudite. Teaches at Peking University, Beida, the so-called Harvard of China. And a lot of that sort of knowledge and erudition really comes through in his verse, but also his humanity. So this is called In Hualien series. A small place of vast smells. Along with the smell of Wenzhou wontons is the smell of wax apple. Along with the smell of wild narcissus is the smell of the ocean. Along with the custard apple mochi is the smell of eel. And along with the fresh air is the ineffable freshness of nature. I conclude that man can be conflicted by life, but shouldn't be conflicted by the life cycle of flowers. People's flowers suffer from people's trees, but that's never been a compelling reason. Waking up in the morning, the sun is like a golden hook, catching the fish of our bodies. Not getting hooked is just luck. Not taking the bait is fun, but fun at best only demonstrates that our bottom line isn't complex. It's clear that the ocean means two things here. Thundering waves are like a blue iron trying to smooth out our experiences, while the ocean in our bodies, its purity suddenly heightened, tosses our individuality onto an iris's wharf. The vision of outsiders is only a projection. The more they project, the less they'll be cheated. Speaking of emotions, the paradox of fate comes from instinct around a simply explained you. As for returning home, it's important that life have a talent for ordinariness, but it isn't as important as you think. On local screens, only sky blue traditions maintain their connections. At any moment, the self is inexhaustible. To recover nature's mysteries means we haven't seen through it. So I think a real recovery should be a theme configured to directly address men's secrets. Speaking of which, it would be better if the scenery were limited. The local scenery takes the truth of time and relegates it to the banks of the Pacific. Pointing with any finger, the blue sky is bigger than the day. The secret I can discover is surely that in Hualien, the days are vast and the nights are quite small. Very, very typical Zandi, probably very hard to follow when you're listening to it. He has kind of twists and turns. As you heard in that poem, Zhang is acutely aware of the natural world. He's very interested in plants and animals and natural phenomena and how they interrelate in complex ways to human experience, as you'll hear in this next poem, Honeysuckle series. From their territory, a few feral cats watch warily as from behind a bamboo grove, a gang of men emerge. Between us and them, every tiny adjustment of distance demonstrates just how political animals are. Indeed, in their glass bullet eyes is a world unknown to us. But don't apologize, no need to worry. Very few riddles remain. You don't need to explain that riddles have always refused their own style. Now, what offers an example of maze style are these flourishing honeysuckle trees. The more abstract the fire of reality, the more its worth as medicine. Even sprayed with pesticides, its processing is still pure. Now tell me, you wouldn't claim you've never picked anything. One more poem from Zandi. Zandi is also extremely well-read. He seems to have consumed the entire Chinese and Western canon. And several years ago in 2013, when Seamus Heaney died, he was really devastated by the news. Heaney is one of the poets whom I think Zandi particularly admires. And he wrote a really beautiful poem in memorandum for Heaney. And in it, you'll hear echoes, if you know Heaney's work at all, you'll hear echoes of some of his most famous poems. So after the Society for New Wisdom Association, in memory of Seamus Heaney, the love of Ireland, far enough but not unfamiliar. With every dig, Ireland's orchids follow that new wisdom and find in the language of loneliness a supreme support. The green tips of leaves sway the careful heart. How will the pistils trembling in a tone of voice regard this side of human life, now poetry's prisoner? As for the hole left by the digging, only sweat can fill it. Only this kind of hole leads to a deeper trust in this difficult world. Call the reflections, They've already persisted this long in a landscape set in a landscape. Love is ice. If you don't believe it, you can see for yourself. The last day of August came like an elephant. Don't look at me that way, for now I'm blind. Blind men for dark times. As Leonard Schwartz, Humboldt's model in Humboldt's gift, painfully said, for like a gun is touch. Everything is grim, but still you open the blacksmith's oily shop curtain. Teach me to be like a hammer, to trust in every touch. And now I'd like to ask Zhang Er to come up and read that in the original Mandarin.
Hello there. Zang is also a long-term friend of mine and admire his work for many years. Every time I go to Beijing, I will make a point to see him. Every time the conversation is very interesting about what he's doing and trying to do, compare notes. Yeah, here is the poem Eleanor just read. 随着那新鲜的深度协会，爱尔兰的爱足够遥远，但绝不陌生。每一次挖掘，爱尔兰的蓝都会随着那新鲜的深度，在孤独的语言中找到美妙的支撑。深绿的夜间摇动一个细心，摇动的花蕊在这样的口风中会如何看待人生的片面，已经成为诗的俘虏呢？至于挖掘留下的坑，只有汗水才能填满，也只有这样的坑，才能在时事的艰难中加深一次信任。给倒影打个电话吧，既然他们已经在风景中的风景里坚持了这么久。爱是冰，不信的话，你可以自己动手试一试。8月的最后一天，像一头大象。别这么看我，我现在是个盲人，这样的底线就该有这样的盲人。德尔莫施瓦兹即洪堡的礼物中，洪堡的原型。他悲伤地说过，接触是一杆枪，情况的确很严峻，但是你坚持掀开油腻的铁匠铺门帘，教会我像铁锤一样去信任每一次触摸。
It's such a pleasure to hear it in the original Chinese. Thank you so much. So I'm going to read, I think, one slightly longer poem from Days When I Hide My Corpse in a Cardboard Box, which I'm going to read the title poem, actually, and in part because I think that that title itself should win an award. Like, that is just such a great title. That describes my last 2 years, you know, like that's basically my life now, in a wonderful way. But so Lok Fung is a Hong Kong writer. She writes in Cantonese. She reads both in Cantonese and in Mandarin. She speaks beautiful English, beautiful native Cantonese, and beautiful Mandarin. She is a cultural critic, a scholar, a radio personality, a commentator. She really is a remarkable woman. And in sort of contrast to Zhang Di, she writes about humanscapes, cityscapes, the city of Hong Kong, the myriad things that you discover even as a long-term resident and find surprising on the streets of Hong Kong. And she writes in a wonderfully rich way with a lot of sort of contemporary references to cultural elements, songs, pop songs, and advertising and makeup and things like this, which makes her sort of, very much a cutting edge kind of poet. And in particular, in this poem, she mentions a hotel from whose heights you leapt that day. And she's referring to the very famous cantopop singer at the time, Leslie Chung, who took his own life in 2003 by jumping out of the Oriental Mandarin in Hong Kong. And Lok Fung was a friend of Leslie Chung's and took the death very much to heart. So just so that reference is there. Okay, days when I hide my corpse in a cardboard box. This sick body curls up, fears the light, dreads sound, but likes the damp. These are the days I hide my corpse in a cardboard box. I see through contracted pupils, my rotting heart hardening bit by bit, turning glittering and transparent. After enduring 244 days, I climb out of the box and in the hypothermic cold, take a heated long distance bus, another steel box, from the bright daylight to the black night. In the city, there are people and street lamps. Cars drive through midair. I can see into buildings from the overpass, the swaying shadows of people, blue clamor of televisions, the far wafting scent of cooking. Turning, the bus wheels almost hit the pedestrians' heels. Red and green sales signs and fluorescent advertising jingles shout at each other. I think Christmas must be coming. And then it's New Year's, Lantern Festival, Valentine's Day, Grave Sweeping Day, and Easter. Year after year after year. How do we deal with these continuous, interminable holidays? What's tired now are these bloodshot eyes, dizzy from the flashes, unable to distinguish the city's dense lights and groups of people. The holiday well-wishing is about to begin. How do we deal with all the commotion? Parents take their children on and off the bus. Lovers go arm in arm from the front of the bus to the back, and the slow-moving elderly are the least likely to be forgiven. How do we deal with such a packed, jostling space? Finally, the bus drives past the entrance of the hotel from whose heights you leapt that day. The shattered steel fence has been repaired. The bloodstains and flowers are just pictures in the news. In this city, there are always new neon lights, switching stories every day. Looking out through the window at the gradually narrowing harbor, we still have reason to believe that next year will still go on. I can't stand all this change from old to new. So in the end, I decide to spend more time hiding my corpse in a cardboard box. I give up water, hope, and light, and get along quite well with myself. Very wise in its own way. So to finish up, I'm going to read a few poems from my own collection, Nine Dragon Island, which actually has some mainland poems and some poems set in Hong Kong, but I'm going to focus on a different section of the book tonight, primarily the one that has to do with family. Dressing. Years after the burden of 2 babies, my mother gives her nakedness as a gift. A porcelain statuette, not statuesque, but matronly, a Mayan idol. Her single breast is a white teardrop on her belly. Flesh shadows and faded hair, spidered stretch marks she blames on me, jokingly. To have this figure after all she's been through is no disgrace, someone might say, and she does. Even a daughter is an intruder. Her body, like her love, too easily overwhelms us. I watch her appraise me. We have the same bones. A warning of what will come from puttering in an empty house, nowhere to go, and no way to fight the body's slow disintegration. The old desire to disagree is gone. Now, what is left? Her, this flesh, my hands helping her into her slip. And now a poem for my father. On the slope of the false peak, my father looks for his grave. He scrapes lichen from headstone carvings, uncovering names. We've climbed all morning and the path outlasts us. We make peace with a rock overlooking a two-eyed lake that stares up like a mute calf. He doesn't say what he's found. Summer cottages, trout buried under white caps. My father calls in his keening voice to the mountain gods who have led him here. Moose tracks, indigestible bone, two crows shriek back in unison. The sun ducks its head behind ash trees, the air beginning to sting. We make the world with the seed of our thought. Unwelcome words wither in my mouth. Heading down, my hand harnesses his shirt like a child's. His balance wavers, legs soft as slow-rotting pines. And then, arm in arm, we steady together and go on. I'll read one new poem, actually, or newish. Don't worry, it's not about the pandemic. But it is about the environmental catastrophe that we're facing. So I don't know, maybe that's worse. This belongs to a new collection called Lessons in Glass, which I am finishing. Filled with all manner of things, filled with all manner of missing things, the world. Filled with all manner of missing things, the world once outdid itself with beauty. We all are acquainted with evil. It, unlike language, is the most human of inventions. But here now is the illusion of not here, not today. A calm lake on a calm day. The graveyard rests nearby for a visit later, but no matter feels greater than a tumbler of clean water, or a red tufted merganser with her chicks close behind, and the dragonflies that once mated in flashes of aerial acrobatics, who no longer have a home where they were born. Memories of wind in the poplar leaves. Even a long burn will heal its own heat in its own arboreal time, were we to let it. Still, time must be felt as sweet or be wasted. All those disasters of politics will also be extinguished in our extinction. A loon drifts slowly through a cove, and instead of a convention, a lone pair of toads croaks and croaks to the deceivingly limitless sun, and the world filled with all manner of missing things. Let me finish with one last poem. I, pre-pandemic, spent a lot of time traveling back and forth from China and spent many years in both Shanghai and Beijing, which I miss tremendously. And this is a poem about the Shanghai that I have known for many, many years. It's called Then Something. These narrowed streets I once called home are home to others now. Their words begin to fail me. I cannot bring a self to mind. In piles of bricks crushed by feet, a dog noses for trash. A beggar picks his way across the filthy puddles. Easy to cling to these desires, to covet their fruits, like the parrot who strains in silence against his perch-chained claw. The sun savors its strength. A humid breeze teases the heat through peach trees, flinging blessings everywhere. Thank you. Right.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Eleanor, for the wonderful reading. And it's really, I found there are, how do I say, common themes for what we are planning, I'm planning to read. So Zephyr Press has been supporting my work for many years, publishing books. And this is the latest publication from Zephyr Press, and thanks to Jim, and called First Mountain. So this is the book, was a collaborative work with American poet Joseph Donahue. We've been working on the translation back and forth for over 10 years before this manuscript get together. And thanks to Jim and Leonard's work, a final editing, put it together, give it a shape. So it came out at 2018. It's a long time ago, but with the two pandemic years, it feels almost 3 years. It's still a new book. It's actually the first time I got around to read it. So I would treat it as a new book. So I have to say a few words about the collection. So first of all, the book is based on a trip I took to inner China. It's Shanxi province, where my grandparents grew up, married, raised their kids, and then they left during the anti-Japanese war. They lived in different part of the country for most of their life. But in their dying wishes is after they are both passed away, the family should bring their ash back to Shanxi province for a proper burial in their ancestor graveyard. So when I heard the news that's their wishes, and I was already in New York, and my both grandparents passed away without I'm physically been there. So the whole family take the ashes from Beijing to Shanxi province. And I thought it was just familiar duty. I need to please my parents. I love my grandparents. I should do that. So, but I didn't know that trip really shocked me and changed it's almost like open another dimension of the world that I know, right? And I grew up in communist China, in mainland China. Both of my parents are follow the communist instructions, and they are party members. So I didn't even know there is such a dimension of Chinese tradition and existed. I thought it's all gone. And when I go back to Shanxi province on this trip, not only I discovered the whole long tradition I don't know, and the language they're using, traditional, the Jin dialect is very much of a tradition, ancient Chinese dialects with the residual carrier of the Chinese tradition. And then the ritual ceremony goes through many days, even though it's not a real burial. It's ash transfer from Beijing to the ancestral grave, but carried out with all the full-fledged of ritual based on the Book of Rites, and which is 2,000 years old. I was just completely didn't anticipate that. I thought after all these communists grew up and this is all gone, but we discovered that. And then for me personally, the most shocking thing is went to medical school and I come to Cornell, has medical trainings, and living in New York for many, many years, feels very much buy into the Western ideology of individualism, right? I'm a unique person, independent woman, and I support myself. I'm quite self-proud and full of hubris, right? And then when I went to the village, I realized I see one village, my grandpa's village. Everybody remind me of my grandpa. I remind myself, and all these people I never met, somehow their physical resemblance. And then go to my grandmother's village. I feel there's resemblance too to my grandmother and to myself. And then all of a sudden I thought, oh my God, I'm not an individual. I'm part of a clan. I'm just a clone, right? And what's my value is, am I a real, truly an individual, or am I belong to something much bigger? So it's physically kind of shocking to realize that. And should I feel more empowered because I should be more brave? Because if I take a risk and something bad happens, it doesn't matter because there are 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 others who is having what I have. Oh, I should feel less hubris and saying, okay, I really can't do anything really great because look at all these people who are just like me, they just living in this countryside. So it's complicated. So after that few days trip down to the village is a year-long, perhaps 2-year-long research about what all these things means. And sense of feels, it's not just for myself, almost everybody. Where is our roots? Where do we belong? The sense of home, and why we attracted to that. And in this world, everybody's on the verge of identity, now identity, who am I? And so gave me a lot of things to ponder. So that was coming up with this Chinese version of the book called Shan Yuan. So it was published in 2005. After that, and start translation with Joseph Donahue, back and forth, another 10 years passed. Yeah, so through the translation, and Joe, if you don't know his work, it's worth to research him because he's a great poet. Ancestor-wise, he's Irish and very much of conscious of his roots and his rituals and the Catholic upbringings and life and death. So it's really kind of interesting and kind of interaction during the book of translation. So so giving all that talk is, I really recommend people check out this book for Joe's work and my work and Zephyr's. And I think hopefully you found, when Eleanor and I will read some of the readings in Chinese and English translation. So hopefully you found it's relevant, not just it's my grandparents, but all our ancestors and traditions and identities all linked together. So we read Chinese first or English first? Any preference in the Chinese first? Okay. This book is kind of more or less a kind of a narrative from the beginning to the end, so to speak. But so I couldn't decide how to introduce the book at the beginning. So ended up, I have 9 sections of prelude. So I never see any book has 9 sections of prelude because it's just a multifaceted. So I'm going to read the prelude number 1. 怎样的开关在预想之外，把梦照得通亮。通向那里的路出岔，不过因为一扇有风景的窗。山挂在墙上，用让人发疯的仔细 嗅出每一棵树，沉积岩的每一层。不过因为有一根针捏在手里，的确去过那里了。100年的山村院落，100年的话语槐树，100年新娘小脚出嫁，以为死去的日子重新燃起。看后现代的肚子、手淫、互联网、重大事件和等我的使命。青砖到顶，青石铺地，绣花长袖，麻纱马甲。裙边花了嫁娘几个月的时间，不长，相比她70年的婚姻。开关，生命的开关是这场让你生让你死的婚姻。看他们手牵红缎，走下坡，走上坡，跪下。天地鬼神父母山，这坐南望北的山堵在眼前，让人发疯。红盖头蒙四方，转过身，你转过身，才看见山前面的水转过。
1. Turn on a light. Illumine my dream with more than just bright anticipation. A road branches, a window. Mountains hang on the wall, maddening, meticulous. Every tree a bright thread, every fold pure silk, pinch of fingers, a needle. Nonetheless, we arrive. Sky-high village, centuries old. In the yards, 100-year-old voices and Chinese scholar trees, Sephora. 100-year-old lotus, demure as a bride's bound feet. Times held to be dead, return, but in flames. See an online vagina, see internet masturbation, see severe events and fate await me. Blue-gray brick up to sky, blue-gray stone paving the yard. Long embroidered sleeves, cambric vest. The trim of the skirt, months of a bride's time. See a moment, see a marriage of 70 years. Is this the light of life? Is this the sacrament that lets you live, that lets you die? Watch them, the man and the woman. Each takes this end of a strip of red satin, a marriage ritual. Walking down the slope, walking up the slope. Kneel down, heaven, earth, ghosts, gods, father, mother, mountain. A mountain to the south devours the light, maddening. Over the bride's eyes, a red scarf. Blind yourself to the 4 directions. Turn around, only then do you see, in front of the mountain, the river. Turn, you're turning, the river is flowing.
So this is how far the prelude goes, number 8. And at that time, I was a young mother, mother, old mother with a young child, I would say. Yeah, okay, so this one is thinking about my own role in the family, really. So number 8 of prelude. 4声太难了，歌唱一样的说话，像书上的小雨点，沙沙沙。像小青蛙呱呱呱，远处的雪沾着窗玻璃龇牙笑。我的太阳在树枝上一上一下荡秋千，忽闪翅膀汪汪汪。 为什么总戴着帽子？小狮子金黄的卷毛。狗狗，赏声正确，而且加了重音。妈妈是什么字母？是什么字母？宝宝，不敖宝，不敖宝和爸爸，不啊爸，不啊爸是波，字母表上第二个字母。妈妈比较复杂，么啊妈，么啊妈在中间偏后的位置。两扇走进走出的门，藏起来吃也吃不完的米，演不完的节目，不能出的名，挣不出的命，宝宝骑上跑的马，呱嗒呱嗒。地上蚂蚁忙个不停，妈妈美，妈妈秘密，妈妈默默，母牛哞哞，妈妈还是个问题的妈。第一个字母是啊，是爱也是安，最容易也最难。猫猫去哪里了？猫猫老了，病了，睡觉不醒，不回家了。猫猫去哪里了？不在了，死了。猫猫去哪里了？对不对？妈妈和猫猫是同一个字母。猫猫去哪里了
？8. The 4 tonalities are difficult. They must be voiced as if singing. Sound of raindrops falling on a book, sha sha sha, little frog, gua gua gua, a faraway snow stuck to the window pane. Toothy smile of a tiny sun swings up and down between tree branches. Wings flicker, woof woof. Why always keep the hat on? Little lion of blonde curls. Doggy, go go. Deflected tone, correct, and the added stress. Mama, which letter are you? Which letter? My little treasure, bao bao, 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 bao. And daddy, baba, ba, 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 ba is B, the second letter of the alphabet. Mama is more complicated. Mama, mama. In the middle of the mouth, but towards the back. Position, men, 2 doors walked in and out. Ni, rice, hidden away, can't be finished. 节目, the performance, endless. Ming, fame, can't have. Ming, fate, which can't be rid of. Little treasure, ride the horse. Ma, or ma, I guess, guada, guada, on the ground. Ma yi, ants busy about. Mom, beautiful, May. Mom, secretive, Ming. Mom, silent, Mo Mo. Crow, Moo Moo. Mom is also a question mark. The first letter is A, is love, I. Also is peace and contentment, An, the most easy and the most difficult. Where did the cat, Mao Mao, go? The cat was getting old and sick. It is asleep and not waking up. The cat won't be coming home. Where did Mao Mao go? No more, dead. Where did Mao Mao go? Yes, Mama and Mao Mao start with the same letter. Where did Mao Mao go?
And if you have 2 or 3 years old, you know what I mean. They will never. Let's keep on asking. Okay, so here is a poem from one of the rituals before the actual burial. It's called burning the night paper. So the paper is supposed to, in thousands of hundreds of thousands of millions of denominations, you send the dead with paper money. Anything you send to the dead, you have to burn it. So this is the evening that carry out that ritual. 烧夜纸，爱能记住吗？几点了？到时候了。守夜，守时辰，守着记忆，雪 线线线，把你缠起，纺锤，这是想起纺锤的夜，想起油松的长辫，油灯，媳妇赶在公公婆婆起身前给自己织一匹红。深层的境界藏进经纬重叠的迷宫，时差。Love never wants to go back, except in its dream, which is now, a moment of tonight, the volume of darkness, of light, the ash red bandana here. 烧，想说的，想写的烧掉，这样才能充裕地谈起这个故事里要好好谈的话。慢，一扎又一扎，不再企图理清眼前的线索。是时候了。三更，夜能记住吗？火的怀抱向夜无孔不入，抚摸纵情的燃烧。我们站起来，再跪下去，能记住吗？ Red ash。
Burning night paper. Can love recall? Can love remember itself? What time is it? Is this the moment? Stay up, keep your vigil through the night. Stay up, keep the hours, keep the memory. Snow. Thread, 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 entwine and tie and tangle me. Spindle, this is the night. One thinks of the spindle, of a glossy black long braid, of an oil lamp, of a daughter-in-law rushing to weave red cloth for herself before her in-laws get up. The deeper realms are hidden in the overlapping maze of warp and woof. Love never wants to go back, except in a dream, which is now, a pinch of tonight, a volume of darkness, of light, of an ash red bandana, burning. What desires to be said? What desires to be written down? Burning, burning down, so we can leisurely converse, so the whole story can be told, slowly. Burning one stack, another stack. You no longer try to comb through the thread in front of you. Is it time? Entering the third watch, the vigil deep in the night. Night. Can it remember? Can it be remembered? Like night itself, the embrace of the fire flickers into every orifice. Caress the tended flame, blazing with fulfillment. We stand up, we kneel down. Night, can it remember? Can it be remembered? Red ash.
Shall we the Chinese just for kind of page? For the next one? Yeah. Okay.
Would you like to introduce it, or should I just paper close to the deck?
Yeah.
Should I just?
Yeah.
All right. Paper clothes for the dead. It is so cold. Take out coats, gloves, sweaters from the luggage. Put on all the shirts. Elder brother's woolen long johns on loan. It's the first day of the 10th lunar month. We wear them all, insulated jackets, insulated pants, hats, shoes, as we begin to make winter clothes for the dead. Paper shirts, paper pants, colorful coats. You sit right outside our circle, under the fluorescent light. Your face darkens. It is so cold. Your skeleton is trembling. Watch us perform our ritual craft. Last year's old felt hat, trim loose and curved up, buttons on the front of the jacket, lost, black cotton jacket, the batting exposed where I can't mend it. My sister-in-law says, weren't there any good clothes? Your great-grandfather and your great-grandmother were buried in old clothes, in rags. The hat now in the casket, carried now out from the cave at the foot of the hill, came off your fifth uncle's head. The old yard was confiscated by Mao. Your grandparents lost the house and farm and animals. They had to dig a cave in the side of a hill, put a door in it, and call it home. Have you seen it? Now it is a storage room. Even in this new house with its heating and hot water, my hands are still cold. How could any hole in this earth not be cold? Scissor the clothes, brighten their color, approximate some new fashion style, hat, suit, tie. Otherwise, the neck will be cold, your neck, landlord, landlady, mine.
Okay, there's another section.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I missed. It continues. Fifth uncle says, your great-grandpa himself opened the sheep pen to the revolution, waved his hand. Okay, he said, let it all be divided up. Even their mattresses and blankets were taken from them. Learn to live on loss. The family motto written on a scroll on the wall of the formal sitting room of the old property. Your great-grandparents' house was crucial to the underground in the fight against Japan. Your great-grandparents snuck food to the Anti-Japanese Association. The day before the Japanese army attacked, your great-grandparents opened up the family larder. They called people from miles around to help themselves. All that night, the farm animals were agitated, and at daybreak, they bolted into the mountains. The Japanese, marching along the Apricot River, dared not climb the hill. They got nothing. That is one part of our immense pride. After the war in the 50s, some villages revolted against the landlords, even killed a few. But in our village, it was our great-grandpa himself, the village head for many years, who called the people and divided up his own property. Even today, elder brother says, our family has many members. Many live too far away, but others come to help. Of course, we treat them well. We don't scrimp on liquor, cigarettes, candies, and cookies. We give many gifts for a day's labor. It is so cold, but less so, with all of us somehow related. Building the outdoor fire pits for the feast, cooking, setting the table, carrying the coffins, holding the funeral banners, wreaths, setting off firecrackers, filling in the grave. Whatever we are doing now, we are reliant on each other, are blessed by, are insured by the virtues of the dead. Cut with scissors, red hat, yellow boots, sky blue tie, apricot yellow scarves. Only such colors honor where the ancestors now live, a celestial heavenly palace, an underground palace, a gold mountain, a silver mountain.
It's really good. I love Joseph Donahue's translation. I'm going to just skip the Chinese. I think it's pretty clear. So the last poem is coming back to New York, and after all that, so but I couldn't forget where I come from now. It's a different world for me now. So the title of the next poem is a tiger woman, which has a story. It's a Chinese legend. There's a legend in the translation, but I'm going to read the Chinese first. 狐女离开这里，在跳动中摆下一张桌子， 黑虎皮打手机，失意落空，为年幼的后代找靠山，丛林伴侣，终身或短程都行。我们只剩下留言机，空白或者沉默是春天拖泥带水的色情，把残酷误认为浪漫，显然致命。设想的嫩刺能不能就着毛毛雨磨成利爪？隔墙永经8届10届唱法号，不听也听得见。他们走了，还有你。过路客除了离开或者包进人肉包子，难有另外的可能。讨论游戏机，再把头发剪得像男孩，天足或一对小脚紧走，笑一笑，笑一笑，让人新鲜。浅浅画眉之后扑下火车，那是另外一个故事。你说为什么，安娜·卡列尼娜？妈妈，你不聪明，希望你比我聪明。在这张什么都可以写的白纸上，什么都不写，空白铺开，如沉默裸出犬齿，你让我无法回避。显然，你已经还是红衬衫，还是不系扣，站在参加晚会的行列中不讲话。我们总是不讲话，只有眼神和其他器官交换位置，像这杯凉水灌醉我，假装在今夜相爱，露出本相，写下种种名臣让我难为情的缠绵。男人女人，只要你不挑剔，总有一条姣好的尾巴。
I really admire the translator's ending, as you'll see. And I'll just read the note that's at the bottom. So, Tiger Woman. There was an old Chinese legend about a hunter who meets a beautiful woman in the forest and marries her. She bears him several children. Then one day she jumps out of the window, turns into a tigress, and disappears into the forest. And what woman has not wanted to do that in her life? Tiger Woman. Shifting from one plane of reality to another, you leap over the table, sit down robed in tiger skin, all while on a mobile phone. Can poetry keep pace with your imagined companion in the woods? Whether for a long life together or a short fling, at the moment, you're not choosy. Back home is the world of landlines and answering machines, empty and silent as desire in springtime. Slush in the street slops over, romance with all its fatal and obvious cruelty. And so the delicate thorn of the imagination, dipped in drizzling rain, is sharpened into a gleaming tiger claw. Through the wall drifts a Buddhist prayer chant. 8 commandments, or is it 10? Someone is singing the Dharma. You may choose not to listen, but you still have to hear it. The chanters walk away. You too are only passing through. So then leave this black tavern at the edge of the mountain before you, served up in dumplings. These days, you can talk about video games, cut your hair short like a boy, keep your natural feet or acquire tiny ones, traditionally bound as you quickly walk, force a smile, feel refreshed, lightly touch up your eyebrows, then jump in front of a train. Oh wait, that's another story. Do you know why Anna Karenina did that? Mom, you are not smart. Hope you will be smarter than me. On this sheet of white paper where everything can be written, write nothing. Emptiness is spreading. Silence bears the fangs I am unable to avoid. Obviously, you're passing through, still in a red shirt, still not buttoned up in line for the evening party, not talking. We are always not talking, only looking and other organs, not just our eyes, are shifting positions. This glass of cold water gets me drunk. I will pretend to fall in love tonight, show off my animal nature, write down all the entanglements that will embarrass me tomorrow morning. Man, woman, as long as you're not choosy, there will always be some tail.
Yeah,
Sure.
okay, great. So, you guys want to come back over here so that people on Zoom can see? Okay, there's there.
OK，
Hi, Zoomers.
I have a question. First off, thank you for the beautiful reading. Readings that were fantastic. What are some upcoming projects we can look forward to in the pipeline?
Yeah, I do have a new translation of the work of Zheng Xiaoqiong, who is an amazing migrant worker poet, 打工诗人, writes in Mandarin, mainland Chinese poet. So there, I have a selected of hers coming out. I also have a finished manuscript of my own called Lessons in Glass, which is, publisher to be decided. So any publishers out there, I'll give you my number. Yeah, so that's the most immediate stuff.
Yeah, as Jim mentioned earlier, one of my opera is supposed to be getting to production, pending on the NEA grant, please. NEA, supposed to be next year to be in production. Called Tacoma Method is talking about the 1885 Chinese exclusion in Tacoma, Washington. The whole town of Chinese residents was expelled from the town in one night. So it's based on that. It's as many projects. It's a long project, goes on. It's date back at least 5, 6, 7 years. I've been working on that. So that's a major project. But my role is finished, so we see the production. And then right now I'm doing a translation project from English to Chinese. For unknown, unspeakable. I don't know the publisher, but for me, it's really honor to be able to translate Rachel Carson after 60 years of her Silent Spring. Has such an influential presence in this country. Finally, I think the Chinese waking up to the reality of pollution. So that's what I've been working on. Not poetry, but I feel like I need to do this.
Very important.
Yeah, and some writing going on, but that's the two things.
Thank you. Great. We love that question.
The opera libretto is written in English for the American audience. And there are a few Chinese words here and there because it's happening in Tacoma, Washington. Yeah, the composer is American and he's located in Tacoma, so it's quite local scene and has a lot of community support. But we just hope nationally we'll get some money so that we can do a better production. So, but the Tacoma Opera board members say we're going to do it no matter what, but I still hope that we'll get little support. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, because it's really needed. I think even it's not just about the Chinese after all.
Yeah.
Any other? Yes.
And I wonder when you came to the States, have gone back and have important ties to my grandparents and great grandparents in Italy, and having written about it and lived there. I'm surprised that you discovered your grandparents
Yeah.
So I'm curious.
Yeah. I think I came here when I was 25 as a graduate student. So I kind of finished my grown up, majority of it in China. And so that's one of the reasons my writing in poetry, it's all in Chinese still. The reason that I'm not aware of, I know my grandparents is from this province, this village, we have relatives. It's part of it because of this Chinese communist period. Yeah, I guess I should take off my mask. A period because all the tradition was swept away. Cultural revolution is basically get rid of all the traditions. So it was really downplayed. And my parents not really emphasize that part of education. You don't have that education in normal settings, but family tradition, I'm sure in the village, they still practice it. But in the city, with parents are so-called intellectuals, they are completely westernized or communist Western movement, right? So it was completely a different, how do I say, ignorant in my generation. Perhaps it's personally, perhaps it's generational of unaware of the tradition. I never see a funeral ritual except bowing to the photographs and wear blacks, but traditionally the funeral you're supposed to wear white. And yeah, so all that things was quite swept away. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I think it's necessity, feels a necessity to write the book. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for attending, everybody. Let's give the poets another round of applause. Poets will be signing books. If everyone could just share the wall, that'd be great.
Any questions from the Zoom permitted?
Can I give you my collection?
Yes.